legend material.
You're wearing some nice wares there, Jamie.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, got a nice retro shirt on from I believe this is from '84, something like that. But yeah, no, this beautiful shirt, along with many others, not just Chelsea shirts, but a mixture of teams. You can get hold of these at ScoreDraw. Check the link in our description down below, and go get yourself one. They're really nice. I think you got one, didn't you?
I have got one in the post. I've got a nice 68 one. Very nice blue kit. Our defending has been questionable all season. I couldn't name a great back four for us. To your point there, I think that is our back four in the Watford game that played well. Zuma is probably, he's our only dominant physical defender, and we've been used to that sort of play for a number of years. You look at sort of the Terrys that we've had for sort of a mainstay for 15 sort of years, and we just had that consistency. Zuma's got that physicality to him. Not necessarily the footballing brain that Terry brings, but the physicality. And I think we need that. There's a real lack of that at the moment in the back four.
What do you, in your opinion, do you think that is it a cause or effect of Lampard's changing them all the time? Do you think that's causing a problem in terms of none of them are getting this kind of partnership together? They're, it's constantly changing. So is that because of the bad form, or is that causing worse bad form?
It's a good point. I think potentially it's a bit of both. I think on paper, it's very difficult to pick a good back four with what he's got at his disposal. So on paper, you would say Alonso left back, maybe Dave right back, and then two of the centre-backs. Rudiger would be probably your best one on paper. In reality, they're just not really fulfilling what you'd expect from them. And so he's having to mix it around, because we're having performances like West Ham. We're having performances where we're letting goals go through from set pieces. So I don't blame Lampard for that. I think it is a causal effect. And we do sort of need to go and pick a back four that's going to work until the end of the season, and then work on it until next season. But it's because you've got people on paper who should be our dominant defender just not performing.
I think that the biggest problem we have is the fact that as I think I said this last week, but you've got four very good centre-backs. Like, there's nothing wrong with any of them. They're all good, except for maybe Rudiger at the moment. It's been absolutely awful. But they're all, in their own right, good defenders. But none of them are, that commanding leader. The communication, none of them are, very vocal on the pitch. And that's, even David Luiz had that. That was something that he brought to the table. But we have...
Maybe it's not desperation like Arsenal.
I wouldn't want him back, giving away 6 penalties in a season. But I think just we need that guy who would come in and be able to give us that leadership, that communication at the back, and just kind of grab that back four by the scruff of the neck and get them in line when they're having a bad game.
Exactly that. And I think sort of Rudiger has got the makings of that, but he needs that dominant defender. I think we've already said it. Someone like a Terry in the back four that just tells him, like, get your head together, you're there, I'm here, I'm keeping this. There's no one owning that. And Dave, as good as a defender as he is, just can't control that back foot. He's up and down the pitch. You need a centre-back controlling where people are, what's people doing, who should be marking who. And there isn't that. And my worry as we look into the transfer options we're talking around, there's not that maturity that we're looking towards. We are looking towards more youth. But as a squad, in the top flight, Burnley are the only squad that has conceded more goals than Chelsea this term. Now, for a club that are used to having sort of Stamford Bridge as that sort of fortress, no one scores against us. We were sort of one of the best defensive runs for many years. And don't get me wrong, let's put this into perspective. We were not expecting the season we've had to date, but we're now being critical of the fact that we are used to a great defence, and we haven't got that at the moment. We've got some good talent, but not a talent that's like orchestrated across the back. And that really leads us on to some of the transfers. I'm going to do a bit of an intro. I've been preparing this all week. Transfer Tracker! It's come from a deep part of my body. So, after that, I mean, what I can only put as mysticism of the Transfer Tracker that's now going to become a weekly segment. Who are you bringing in? I mean, there's a lot of talk. I'm not necessarily happy with the talk, but there's a lot of talk of who we could be bringing in to come and fix our defensive woes.
Okay, so I'll name what I've heard. I'll name the ones that I've heard because I know we discussed this briefly before, but I've actually had a couple more on top of that as well. So you've got Declan Rice is the one we've heard more recently, which actually the more I thought about it, the more the idea's actually grown on me. I think mainly because he would be the perfect candidate to be cover for Kante in that holding midfield position to allow us to have those two number 8s playing. As a centre back, he brings that leadership, but I think that's about it. We need a big guy. You need Zuma with the John Terry personality is kind of what we're looking for, and I don't think Declan Rice will bring that physicality, which is the downside.
The issue is that we mentioned this last week. We're bringing in a player to play out of position.
But the thing is, he was when he was in Chelsea's academy, he was a centre back. That was his position.
Don't get me wrong. There are some great stories of this happening very well. Vincent Kompany, is a great example of this, where he was brought in as a centre mid, placed into centre back, and was probably one of the best Premier League centre backs for a number of years.
Yeah.
But for me, he's not. He's a player that if we bought, he's not going to come cheap to start with. Secondly, especially if they don't go down, they're not going to sell him to us of all clubs. But he's not going to be. He's one of those players that could be like a John Stones. He's going to take a season or two to sort of give that true testament of whether he's going to be good or not. Mm-hmm. And he's not necessarily going to hit the ground running, which is what we need. Yeah. We need that player who's going to step into the centre back and just start telling Zuma, Rudiger, whoever it is who's partnered with them, just to sort of get into position, do the basics right. And I don't think he's going to do that. I don't think a player of his age and necessarily his stature is going to come in and own our defence, which is where I really worry around that. A few others, I mean, the realistic one for me, and he's not going to come cheap, is the Napoli.
Koulibaly.
For me, he is that player. You spend 90 million and he's going to walk into that defence and start to tell people where they're going wrong. And you're going to get probably expected results off that for the money that he's going to be bringing in.
It's difficult because I can't imagine that we're going to bring in the left back that we want, Havertz, and then go and spend another 90 million on the centre half when we do have 4 good centre halves. I think the problem is I don't think Lampard sees centre back as a big issue that we have. I think he feels that he can work with what we've got because they're young, really. I mean, like Rudiger is not old. He's the more experienced, but he's not old. And then the other 3 are still young, and I think Lampard feels that he can mould them into what he wants.
I worry.
Whether anyone else believes in that is a different story, but I don't see him prioritising that. I think he would rather get Chilwell and Havertz, and then if there's some money left over in the bank for a centre half, then he'll go out and try and secure someone. But I can't imagine that would have the funds left to go and get someone like Koulibaly, especially with City sniffing around him as well.
Yeah, and I mean, to be honest, the player that I think is a Lampard signing, and for me, all the stars start to align when I think around it is Ake. So for me, we've got the buyback clause to start with. Secondly, he plays centre back, and I know he's played for Bournemouth and they've been dire the second half of this season. But he is that one sort of gem for that club. He's done very well. He's left us and actually sort of really turned himself into a mature centre back. But he's that Lampard mould of being able to play left back or centre back. So he's not just a one position player. He can play in those multiple.
I think the one issue you have with Ake is his size. He's 6 foot, I think, which for a centre half is not that tall. He's fairly physical. He's kind of like a Tomori and another Tomori. I mean, Tomori's physical enough. He doesn't get bullied too much, but he is not that big Zuma type player. So I think Zuma can, if he just works on his communication a bit better, he could be that commanding defender we need. But it just might take a bit too much work in the time frame that we really want.
Yeah. And you'd expect it for a player of his age to have now matured. The other one in the hat is, and I'm going to really try and pronounce his name correctly here, Upamencano.
Do you want me to fill that blank?
I mean, to be honest, I don't think you need to, because I think I've got that spot on. But yeah,
Upamencano.
That's what I said.
Upamencano.
This is a man that I think potentially he's sort of a halfway house between the two. I think he could really sort of step in. He's not going to come for the extortionate amount for Koulibaly. He's probably a bit more expensive than Nathan Ake, but probably brings a little bit of both of them. And comes with sort of the benefit of knowing Timo Werner very well. Probably playing quite well into that side. There are a lot of other clubs looking in, is the honest piece of it. But I think it does come back to that point of whether we think Lampard's going to prioritise a centre-back. And it's interesting because there have been sort of some moves between whether Chilwell will be affordable. Is he becoming too expensive now?
Oh, yeah. I mean, if they're still asking for, 60 million plus, then there's just no need. I mean, he's not a 60 million player. He's a good left back, but he's not a great left back. He's not like one of these, I must have him. I look at him play and I think, yeah, he's decent. But I don't look at him and think, wow, he's amazing. And if you can fill that gap with a Tagliafico for 20 million or Tellez is another one, which would be maybe 30 million. Why are you going out and spending? Yeah, Digne is the most recent one, which actually I think he's a very good shout. I think he would be a good option. I mean, he's got that connection with Zuma from the national team. I mean, I don't specifically know if they're good friends or not, but that it's something that can you can look at and think, yeah, maybe that communication might start to come through when you've got a fellow countryman next to you. So, and then obviously Kante will be just ahead of him, so that might start to bring out that kind of communication side of Zuma. Not just that, but Digne is a very good wing back in general. I think he can play as a fullback or a wing back. His crossing of the ball is better than Alonso's, but that's not difficult. And defensively, he's quite sound as well. And I don't think he would be that expensive, although Everton are quite renowned, like Leicester, for driving a hard bargain for a player. So it depends how much money. I think if it's like 30 million or something, then yeah, that's probably a better option because he's also young.
If you're a better man, what positions do you reckon will fill by the end of
left back? 100%. There's no way we're not going to sign another left back. If we don't, then it'll be an absolute travesty. Just anyone other than Alonso and Emerson.
I'll play Rudiger out of position.
I do think Havertz will happen. I do,
especially considering the results have gone. He just doesn't seem happy there anymore. I think they haven't got Champions League. They lost to Bayern in the German Cup, which they didn't have a great game. Goalkeeper error added to the misery, but he did score. But just didn't look that happy, if I'm going to be honest, whilst playing.
Yeah. I think from what I've been reading, we were waiting until after that cup final. But the other thing that we are going to kind of have to wait on, I think, is whether we get top four, because, I mean, he's not going to leave a Europa League team to go and play for another Europa League team. He wants to be playing in the Champions League, and I think that's going to be quite important. That would probably bring down the wages we'd have to pay him, because I think if we didn't get Champions League, we'd probably have to up what we're paying him weekly for him to actually think about coming. So I think that'll be quite important. So it might even get delayed a bit further. But Bayern have pulled out of the race pretty much now, because they've just bought Sane, so they can't really afford to go out and pay that kind of money for Havertz this year. They want him to wait another year at Leverkusen, but it doesn't seem like he's willing to do that. It sounds a lot like...
The arrogance of Bayern.
Oh,
we want you to... I hate it.
Wait for us. But then when players do that, so many times it doesn't work out. Like, look at Leon Bailey, another Leverkusen player. He's been waiting and waiting and waiting, trying to get the right move, because he's basically got loads of representatives behind him who are all demanding different things for them personally on top of the deal. And he's still there, and he's hardly playing now. He's took a big back step in his career because he waited too long. I don't think Havertz will do the same thing. And Real Madrid are the other team, but again, they're kind of hesitant on making a deal at the moment. They want to wait another year to see what will come of it. So I think we're the front runners for it. I think we will probably be the ones to do it, but we just have to make top four, in my opinion. I think if we finish top four, Havertz will be a Chelsea player, in my opinion.
And then, I suppose, I mean, to be honest, there are, I think sort of what we've seen for the last couple of games is there are gaps that we need to fill. And I think the transfer tracker, as much as sort of my new intro, is going to cause a lot of people to ask for this every week. But it's going to be much more interesting to go and watch going forward, simply because there are definitive gaps that we need. And we knew that, but now we've got the ability to buy, the ability to go and do this. It means even more. And
we're in a lot stronger of a position than most teams, which means that the competition for players is not going to be as high. You know, you're still going to have Man United, Man City, probably Barcelona, Real Madrid, Bayern Munich in some cases, PSG. They're probably the ones that are going to be fighting us for players. You look back over the last few years, we've probably been fighting, Arsenal and Spurs, and even on occasion Everton for a player. It shows that we actually have benefited from not only COVID, but from our transfer ban, because we've been able to save up that money and actually bring through the youth. And now we only need to go and fill in a few gaps, whereas before we probably needed a full squad overhaul. So it's actually benefited us quite a lot in the end, which, thank you, UEFA. Thank you, FIFA.